But we do have to adopt the meeting minutes from August.
Motion to approve.
Second, please.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Carried. There are meeting notes from our last meeting, but we did not have a quorum, so Lisa said they're not, we don't need to vote on. We're moving right to Mike with presence.
Well, thank you, and thank you all for being here today, particularly in light of the fact that we're going to have an expedited board meeting so we can spend some time on some strategic planning. I would like to welcome Michael. Thank you for joining us. I also would like to introduce Riley Werner, our new administrative assistant, who joined us yesterday. So she hasn't figured us out yet, but at the same time, we also have Mary Ellen McLaughlin, who's here today, who some of you have met over the years, who has served as our facilitator for strategic planning. We have been very, very active. I think the big news is the event that CEDC, Community College, and Berkshire Taconic hosted at the college on Friday, called Skilling the Gap, and I'm going to just ask Dr. Drummer to give her perspective on the event.
It's overwhelmingly successful. Planning for this actually started in the fall of 2019. I got together and said, we want to do a lot of people and said, we're going to do like with this in March of 2020. So the rest so
Yes.
in we had 150 people who registered. Out of that 115, 94 actually showed up, which I thought was pretty good. We didn't have a really stringent RSVP. We were serving lunch. We had the opening remarks from John Williams, who is the president of the Bank, followed by our keynote speaker, Ed Bosch, pattern CEO, and so he presented some, data that most of us are very familiar with respect to housing shortage, the acute labor shortages, the fields that are in most demand, obviously, healthcare leads the list, followed by travel, tourism, things that didn't surprise us, but the members of the audience who don't live in this space every day were really shocked by what they saw. And I think you understand for the college, I was especially pleased because I made some brand new connections for developing partnerships that will, give our students more opportunities, to transfer the workforce in this post-pandemic era. So all in all, I think it was really a worthwhile endeavor. It took a lot of work, and I want to thank Mike and his team for everything that they contributed to it.
So I think it was terrific, as you said, and I think from our perspective, the opportunity to coordinate the business marketing with the economic development the organization in Greene County, along with the Columbia and Greene County Chambers of Commerce, as well as the opportunity to continue to work with college and Berkshire Taconic continues to strengthen the partnerships. I think that what I heard most from our table was how to continue to drop the stone in the water and have the circles of partnership go out in a way that we can effectively communicate in a county that's so large and geographically dispersed.
I think the other side and I think Dyson Foundation as well, stepping into community.
Well, and I was thinking that perhaps, at a future board meeting, other than in December, January, when it might be snowy, we might have Peter come and make a 5-minute or 10-minute presentation as the partnerships we've all been working on.
That would be great because, as you know, they only serve Columbia County in addition to Berkshire County, but they're very mindful now that, you know, with college that, you know, we can serve two counties and we can't harm them. So we're trying to help us navigate that. There is also a fund for Columbia County through the Berkshire, so, you know, that would be.
And there's some grants that were kind of a giveaway that what $15,000 of grant money for not-for-profits that came out of the conference. Thank you very much. It was very exciting and again, teamwork, and we appreciate the college and Berkshire Techonic's tremendous staffing and support. We have been working on housing. As you know, the County Board of Supervisors approved a contract with CEDC for 3 years, $250,000 over the 3-year period to serve as the affordable housing coordinator. We have about 12 resumes for a CEDC staff person who will coordinate housing. And I'm working with Chairman Morrell and the other supervisors in connection with putting together a housing task force, affordable housing task force. And what we realized, the chairman wants to keep it at 10 to 12 people. He only wants 2 supervisors so that it's not, you know, overweighted by the supervisors. The supervisors' participation can come through their economic development committee and board meetings. He's indicated he would like Supervisor Ron Knott from Stuyvesant and Supervisor Brenda Adams, former head of Habitat, to represent the board on the task force. So we got looking at this and we realized that there are a host of people whose day job is to deal with affordable housing, from the director of Habitat to the executive director of the Columbia Green Board of Realtors, to other organizations. And we're going to have those individuals whose day job it is to support housing initiatives be advisors to the task force, so that the task force isn't, all the seats aren't filled up professionals as opposed to community leaders from around the county. We hope to announce the task force at the chairman would announce it at the November 9th Board of Supervisors meeting. We'd hope to have someone in place as the director by the end of the term. We've also been working on broadband. I think I reported at our last meeting that Dave and I had called with Public Service Commission and our consultant, MC Fiber Services. We had in looking at our list of unserved addresses that the consultant identified and comparing it to the Public Service Commission's list, there was a 70% discrepancy. At first, they were a little bit can't be, but now they're working with us. They gave us their list. We signed the confidentiality agreement. And what we did is we took the 2 lists and sent them to the 4 providers and asked them to help us identify, do you serve any of these people? And that's not proprietary. There was a lot of early issues that the providers didn't want to play their corporate hand, but you can call an 800 number and ask, can you provide service to this address? So, and we have gotten back information from GTEL, Mid-Hudson, and Consolidated. There was a staffing change at Spectrum Charter, but the good news is that the person who was in that job, he, on a temporary basis, sent us to someone whose job was similar on Long Island. And I mean, the guy was courteous and cordial, but that was about it. But Sam Parker, who was the governor's office regional representative for the 8-county capital region, who we worked closely with and coordinated many of the budget sessions that we've held at the college, has been hired by Charter to be their government affairs person for upstate New York. So we spoke with him on Friday and we're getting him the list so he can update that. You also will recall that Representative Delgado, prior to becoming lieutenant governor, had used a portion of his $10 million of earmarks that each member of Congress got to provide funding to serve 300 plus unserved addresses in Austerlitz, Ghent, Canaan, and New Lebanon. And fortunately, those funds, along with 19 other members of Congress who allocated money for broadband, was given to the USDA to administer. The USDA process, as Dave will tell you from his experience in Mid-Hudson, is beyond onerous. So the towns of Ghent and the town of Austerlitz decided they had excess ARPA money, and they would go and do approximately 220 addresses on their own, leaving New Lebanon and Canaan to deal with the USDA. Unfortunately, because Ghent took the lead in the application of the legislation that was enacted to authorize the appropriation for the earmark, only mentions the town of Ghent. And they were going to subcontract or be have the other towns sub-grantees. So when the town of Ghent said they weren't going to participate, the USDA said the money's gone. So we intervened, and I spoke with Congressman Ryan and his office. I did go to grade school and high school with his parents, which didn't hurt, but he got us on the call with the USDA, and we ended up being able to work with them. The town of Ghent has stepped up and agreed to be the quote administrative grantee, and we're working with Consolidated because they have done USDA grants directly before. We set it up where they would take the money directly, and Ghent would just serve in an administrative figurehead role. But there are issues because the USDA process requires extensive environmental review. We're hoping that because most of the additional service will be on existing poles, that we can work through that. But another thing we found when our consultant, which is a matter we have to ask for your approval, he's gone back out to look at updating where we are from last summer. There's a $15,000 contract for that work. His initial work is indicating that there's at least 300 addresses off the 1,250 that have been served by the providers in the ordinary course of their business. So that would bring it down to around 900. If we can get the 300 from the USDA, that brings it down to 600. And we will have a very good list of those addresses to present to the state when the funding starts to flow from the feds. The feds haven't even issued the regulations as to how to apply for the money, so we're pretty far ahead of the curve. And we've whittled the list down from over 5,000 in over 5 years. Dave and I met with our consultant, MC Fiber Services. You'll recall that we had 2 contracts with them. A phase 1, it was $30,000. Phase 2, second $30,000. So that work was all completed by December of last year. You remember we approved $1,000 a month retainer from July going forward until we determined that there was future work for them. We are recommending to the board that you approve a $15,000 contract for them to be able to go out and do the work that the PSC has asked us to do to prove whether their list is right or ours is right. And we said to them, we're not here to put Clegg lights on you. We're here to get the list right.
Back in the county.
I've talked to the county, and what we've done is we've put $60,000 in next year's budget, and it would be reimbursed next year. And so, Dave, did you have any other comments before we ask for a motion?
I would make a motion.
Any discussion? Kind of complicated, but it is what it is. We need to redo this. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried.
Thank you. We also have been working on solar projects. The county had asked us to oversee the negotiations of payment in lieu of tax agreements for solar projects under 5 megawatts. We're up to about 9. It's right now their price is $3,500 a megawatt, generally split 50% to the school district, 25% to the town and the county. And we're continuing to work on those projects. Jessica has been working with me on some membership activities. We expect to get a membership campaign kickoff by November 1st. Board member Rick Rector has been helping us based on his experience in marketing, and it's been we're working with a firm, never remember their name,
Kathy Ode.
Kathy Ode, who does the economic development marketing for Greene County, and understands us pretty well. And, at a price that's under of the need for board approval. And Jessica, if you could just give us a quick update on Columbia Forward.
Sure. So Columbia Forward for the new board members is a 3-year program to assist Columbia County-based small businesses in local economic development committees. So this initiative has been pretty active over the last couple of months. Based on our last report to the Board of Supervisors in September, we have posted the website. We created the website, got that up and going. There's a link on our site to Columbia Forward where we provide sort of the details on the loan program, as well as some resources that are available to them and sort of a way to communicate. We began compiling and organizing business data. One of the big objectives of the program is to create a database of all businesses in the county to be able to share with the towns. And so that we're kicking that off. I've begun working a lot with the economic development committees across the county. There's a lot of them. And just being sort of a resource to them. A handful of really sort of grabbed onto this and are excited about it. They're asked us to host like business resource roundtables, which we're starting to put together and coordinate with the chamber. We held our first workshop, our business workshop, which was on October 11th, which is when your HR department is you. Martha ended up attending it, and I think it sounds like it went really well. I think the topic was a smaller group, which I think benefited the people that were in attendance, because it sounds like it was a lot of interactive. It was really a lot of questions and answers specific to the presenter, was able to really answer individual questions. We supported over the last couple of months 15 grant applications with assisting from reviewing and providing comments and feedback to providing support letters, and so a range of how we were involved in those applications, but that seemed to go really well. We provided technical assistance to 5 businesses so far. And then under the loan program, we provided 4 businesses with Columbia Forward loans totaling $65,000. And then for those 4 businesses also received the Columbia Forward grant of about $6,500. So they were 2 startups and 2 existing businesses. And then Martha, I think, has some for you today as well. So, so far it's been really active. And had a great meeting with the Chamber of Commerce yesterday to sort of start to plan out more of a structured plan of, I think in the last 2 months it was, let's just go, let's get out there. But now we're kind of organizing it in a fashion where it's structured. What are the tasks we want to complete and how do we want to coordinate our efforts together? So it's going really well.
Questions for Jessica? I think one of the things as you hear, putting together a business roundtable with the chamber, with their economic development committee, then you bring the skilling the gap people in. It's really starting to at least visualize the synergies that can be achieved, and that the Board of Supervisors agreed would be useful to have us do this project. The treasurer's report.
Yeah, the committee met, right?
Committee met.
I wasn't up there.
We met last week. We went through the budget from the past and kind of some ideas on the future of how to maybe lay out the numbers that are a little more organized. And we had 2 new members on our committee, so we really went through it, item by item. Thankfully, yeah, we got through it.
It was painful, but I thought that
I enjoyed it.
We specifically Mike has specifically broken down the way the office, expenditures or things like that.
Very good. Thank you.
on the good news is I had a meeting on the housing task force with Chairman Morell, and on the way out he called me back in, which is always nervous, and he said, "Oh, by the way, I want you to know we're going to approve your full $460,000 budget allocation, which we were budgeting." on top of, the 85,000, which is our share of Future Forward, and the 65 to 70,000, which is our share of housing. And he also was very happy with how these projects are going. If we look at our balance sheet, on the balance sheet, we're up $445,000. That's primarily the increase in loan funds that we received from the SBA last year. Was that 400,000, Martha?
I'm sorry.
400,000 since this time last year from the SBA. So that, we're a steady balance sheet. In the interest of time, unless there are questions, since we did have an extensive finance committee meeting, just looking at the P&L, we're $105,000 over budget. Primarily that's from Columbia County. And one of the things that was of a concern to me was they did, even though Columbia Forward started in July, they paid us in July for January to June. So I do have, when you look at the fact that our net income is $100,000 over and our after expenses, and that we're $5,000 over budget on expenses, in the end of 9 months, I'm not worried about, where we are there. And we do have some of the county money in deferred revenue, but I do want to end up where we have in reserve the funding from January to July, so that in essence, we can go out into January to July of 2025. If you look at the expenses, we're in good shape with the exception of the new initiatives and the office expense. But on the new initiatives, that included $15,000 where we received a grant from Hudson River Bank and Trust last year, which the accountants made us book as income last year. But the expense, which was a $15,000 payment to the town of Stockport for the improvements to their park that the grant was intended to fund, was this year. So, and so the $31,000 over budget is $15,000 there and $15,000 as part of the $60,000 in broadband. So it's and then on the office expense, I think we did go through that pretty carefully, and part of that was some additional computer equipment. We didn't really have the memberships and sponsorships in there, and I think they did put the we did $7,500 to support the Berkshire Tectonics program E for All, and I think they put the $15,000 for the college's Career Connects was put in sponsorship rather than new initiatives. So, again, I don't like using up the employer expense savings on other things, but there were $5,000 over budget on expenses. The only other item was the accounting, which we were significantly over on accounting because of the single audit that was required, and we're budgeting for that next year. Mr. Chairman, I submit this for approval.
We need a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
Make a motion.
Second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
Jumping quickly to the budget because we're required to post it with the authority budget office on Monday. So Lisa's glad we're having the meeting today. What I've done is I took last year's budget, I took projected this year based on 9 months and the remaining 3 months of 2022. And on our administrative revenue, the 2 IDA contracts are fixed contracts, so that those numbers stay the same. The Hudson IDA, we get 10%, of any fee for a project up to $10,000, and we anticipate at least 2.5 projects next year, which one would be the Galvin housing project, and I think we've and one there was we anticipate that the Elks Club project into a hotel is moving forward. And we anticipated that there would be one more. So it's really only, $5,000 a stretch, but you want to always have some kind of a stretch. The Office of Community Renewal is something that Jessica has really been helping us with. We have been able to get the county and the city to agree to have CEDC be the sub-grantee on grants that the state will make with federal money for businesses to buy equipment. We're entitled to up to a $15,000 fee on each of those contracts that we administer. And Jessica pointed out to us in the past, we were leaving some money on the table there, but what we were doing is we were ensuring that the developer got the full amount of the contract. So we were trying to help people there. But so the 460 from the county, the chairman indicated was secure. I've included the Columbia Forward allocation, the housing allocation, the broadband allocation, and the remaining money left for the grants on our loan program. $5,000 in grant income is really the Angelo loan, which is booked as a grant. And on interest, we kicked it up a little bit from our, because you'll remember 2022 is based on 5%, and then we lowered it to 3.75. And we continue to grow and expand the portfolio, and Mark will give you an update on that in a moment. We are going to try with our membership campaign. We have to be sure that all board members are members. We did let it go during COVID because we didn't want to put pressure on people while they were either struggling with their own business or giving money to social service organizations that were serving people who needed help. And we are getting $230,000 now from the SBA, but that contract is half because of the fiscal year that the government is on, runs with us from July 1 to June 30th. So I put half in, and then I reduced it a little bit. Although Martha has some news to tell us that assuming the SBA funds at the same level, we're in even a better position based on the number of loans we've done to hit that goal. So I'm fairly comfortable with the income. Are there any questions on the income? On the expenses, I think all I'd like to say is we did up the micro business expense because I think if we're getting more money from the SBA to do work, we should be spending more money on consulting. And we did, as I pointed out to the Finance Committee, by breaking the office supplies and new initiatives into more detailed categories, I'm more comfortable that this year, we're basically adds up to what I'm projecting we're going to spend next year. So I think we'll not see the significant over budget on expenses for those categories next year. We do include interest on the EIDL loan, and we did include the increased salary and employee expense that will result from adding Riley, adding the housing coordinator, and we're still looking to hire someone to replace Laura Crana. And we did account for the increase in accounting fees. Are there any questions on the expenses? It's a zero balance bottom line, but we try to make $1 more than the bottom line because as a not-for-profit, you don't want to lose money, but effectively use all your income to support your mission and activities. Chairman, I move.
We need a
Put that
motion
for
to
adoption.
approve the budget.
Motion to accept.
I'm sorry, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Thank you
Carried.
very much.
Thank you, Mike. The executive committee did not meet. Governors and nominating did not meet. The loan committee, I'll turn over the motion.
Okay, thank you, Dave. I go through this portfolio review in great detail with the loan committee, and we did receive some payments since the loan committee met a week ago. So the only two, this one is dated 10/17, list of being past due. And, they have sent in one payment, we received it on Friday, and they promised the balance by the end of the month. And the other one on here is Old Strawberry Brewery, and, Mike and I are actually meeting with one of the afternoon.
Most of them.
Okay, well,
I need a motion to approve the portfolio review. Second? Second. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. Thank you.
okay, the next one, yes, we do have a loan to present, we have two in fact, and the first one is Crystal Track. This is a printmaking toy that was invented by an individual named Brandon Ham, who has been a delight to work with. Brandon is relatively new to the business world, but he's been receiving all kinds of advice and has mentors of that CEG and the Center for Gravity in Troy. He has a provisional patent on this toy, like Lego, which is really what he aspires to sort of be comparable to. It's an open-ended and constructive toy, which he thinks that's his philosophy of a good toy. So he's been making these one at a time using a very laborious process. But the response has been really terrific. He really just can't take any additional orders until he has a more efficient way of producing them. And so he is looking for $50,000 to create the tooling that a manufacturer would use to create 1,000 of these kits. Brandon has some experience in this realm working with manufacturers. Again, he is getting advice and counsel from the individuals at EG. His wife works in marketing and branding, and she'll be helping him promote it. It's a risk, certainly, but as I said, the initial response has been very positive. He's not looking to pay himself in the first few years. His wife generates enough income to cover their household expenses, and we will have a second mortgage on their home. This will be both an SBA and a CEDC loan at 5%. The total is $50,000 for working capital material.
And this was approved at the loan committee.
It was.
There was a feature article about this company in the Capital District Business Review, and we did speak with CEG, and they're the Manufacturer Extension Partnership for the Capital Region, and they provide discounted, like we provide technical services to businesses, they provide manufacturing related technical services to businesses. So it's a partnership that we think is strong.
Approximately kits, but orders come in and he really can't take any more. He has one store, I think over in Pittsfield, that has reordered now 3 times, and they've been promoting it on their Instagram page. But again, the process of taking them off is very important.
Do you want, does anyone want to see the,
Yeah.
I need to get to the internet.
Martha, is this for equipment or?
Well, that tooling mechanism,
Okay.
yes, the bulk of it is going to that.
So here's the idea of the press, right? And these are the Lego pieces you put together to make your picture. And then,
Certainly gives diversity to our portfolio.
Somebody making.
Yeah.
It is.
I think it's fine enough, but what we found is people that are purchasing it are grandparents. It's something they can do with grandchildren, and apparently, I think $125 a pop or the.
We're a little concerned about his price point, but as he gets volume and production, I think he realizes that can come down.
Where is he selling right now?
Pittsfield,
Just Pittsfield.
yeah, online.
One piece of advice he didn't get up in CEG was insurance, and I'm always very worried when there are tiny little pieces that can be ingested. So he's got his insurance coverage, and he will have whatever, age appropriate and warnings on the label.
Any more discussion? Need a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right. Thank you, Monica. Yeah, one more.
Yeah, we have one more. CEDC. This is the marketing and branding firm owned by Allison McLean, who is highly organized and competent business owner. She's another individual that's been a joy to work with. Just like Brandon, she has an outstanding credit score. She has funded this business to date herself, and she is now looking to expand, and she's requested $50,000 to do that. She's already chosen a contractor that for them, they do branding and marketing, and in fact, that's how she is going to expand. They're going to revise and improve their own communications and outreach so that they can attract additional clients. But they do have a steady client base, both national firms and local firms. And again, this is the $50,000 request, 5% is the interest rate. And it would be for working capital. And once again, we would not only have the personal guarantee of the owner, but we would have a second mortgage on her home.
Martha, who are the local customers?
Part of this. Hang on. He works for Scribner's, Catskill Lodge across the river, as well as Windham Mountain, Glenwood Farm, Upper Hookers and Parenthood. She's done pro bono work with a recovery kitchen here in Columbia County, and the rest of these. Oh, and Auto Market in Germantown. The rest are larger. National.
This was approved to the loan committee as well. Motion approved. Any more discussion? Motion. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried.
Thank you for
And Martha, you want to share the report on how many loans you did last year?
Yes, so the SBA does track the number of loans that we made from the SBA loan portfolio, and the year ends for tracking purposes on September 30th. The minimum to remain in the program is 10, and actually it started out at 4. It's been increasing every year. And we just closed on our 20th loan, so I think we've done fairly well.
And that's on the September 30th federal fiscal year, which is the way they count it. And I did run into Jeff Boyce, who is with the SBA regional office in Albany. And he said others had increased this year too, but not that we were highest in his region. So thank you, Mark.
Workforce and education, again, did not meet. Dr. Drummer, before anything else?
We did get our 305,000. It's done on an algorithm. I'll explain that. So we are going to be moving forward with providing electric vehicle certification for automotive technology.
Very good.
A couple of hybrid vehicles, one from Subaru and one from.
Very good.
And also the governor announced $150 million workforce development grant program. We're going to all the two chambers, the two economic development offices, the college, Questar, others. We can get you the information if you're interested. There's going to be a webinar next week on Friday. Yeah. And Amber Mooney, now known as Amber Wrangle, is going to coordinate that. She's been appointed by the governor to head up that program. She most recently was the workforce director for the New York Business Council, and for 6 years she worked with me at CEG. So, and also we have met Misty McGee, the new director of the Hudson Development Corporation, and we've been working with James Honish, who's the new economic development director for Greene County, and those are two very important partnerships to us.
And that almost wraps it up. I'm going to go into public comments. I don't think there's anybody online. There's no one here, so. And then that, and now we're going to keep the meeting open, right? Go into our board strategic planning discussion.
And we get planned at for 75 minutes, starting at 9:15. So we might even get out early. We are glad to have Mary Ellen O'Loughlin join us again. As you remember at a previous meeting, Jessica had been working on this as well, and I'll turn it over to you, Jessica, and then you can introduce Mary Ellen.
Yes, if you, okay, I hope there'll be an opportunity now or as we get in the strategic planning process. To introduce ourselves, a lot of old faces like mine, but also some new faces as well. And it's a good idea for us to introduce one another.
That's great. Do you want to do that now, just before we get into the strategic planning and having discussions?
That is part of our agenda for today. So, because I don't know all the faces, many of you are familiar, there are some new ones at the table as well. I know that you don't know necessarily who I am. So the next slide. Today we're in 75 minutes, which always catches me, because 75 minutes is not nearly long enough. But we're going to do what we need to do and do it effectively and efficiently. My name is Mary Ellen O'Loughlin. I've been doing strategic planning and facilitation for more years than I care to recount. So rather than count the number of decades, we'll just say, I know what I'm doing. And with that, I would like to, and I've also been working with Mike now for over 10 years, probably 12 or so, and helping and partnering with CEDC since Mike came on board. And I kind of show my face every 3 years or so.
We started with Mary Ellen, ran the grant study and report for the creative economy that was released, which resulted in the creation of an organization called ACE, the Alliance for the Creative Economy. She is the executive director of the grant study.
So if we could go around real quick and start with Dave. Oh, I love name tags.
Portfolio, while old faces that you remember.
Thank you.
Portfolio.
Hi, Rick Cummings, Muller and Cass here in Hudson. I've been on the board, I think 3 or 4, 5 years, something along those lines.
Non Balsar, I'm actually with Latory Insurance Agency, but clearly also paramedically licensed as well.
It's not the Halloween costume. I thought you were earlier.
I'm working when you're on
I
today.
checked my pulse when you came in.
I am new to the board, just joined this year, 2 months ago.
Are you familiar with the county? Have you been here for?
Yes, I've lived in the county since 2015. I was operations director in Boyd for Rescue, stepped down and just getting back into it.
Andy Howard, Freeman Howard, I'm the board attorney.
Gabriel, I work for CEDC as an economic developer.
I'm an associate broker with House Hudson Valley and also an artist.
Michael Malinsky, owner of Malinsky Photography and residential tech guy here at the board. I've been on the board for a year and a half.
The Lord is my shepherd.
Rachel Levine, been a few months on the board and have been coming up here for about 10 years until just a couple of weeks ago, my partner and boyfriend owned Central House. So we'll see what that next chapter is. And I'm an advertising branding person. We've been coming up here 10 years, moved up here a few years ago. Now I have, I'm a real estate salesperson. I'm on the Zoom. Short-term rental community and
Great, so long as the historic site, cooperative agreement with the City Parks and
Director, Hudson, New York, background in marketing, retail, and fashion, and a stellar political career.
I expect there's more to that, and I'll stay out of that. I'm Carly Drummer. I'm president of Columbia Green Community College. I've been in the higher ed sector for 45 years. Moved here in 2019.
following the presidency of a community college in Connecticut. Before that, lived in Chicago for 20 years, and before that, lived on Long Island for 20 years.
I'm Sarah Day, I'm a small business owner. I actually have a business and husband and
I'm Derek Grout. I own Prince Spirits Distillery, in Blake. On the board. Alan, for now doing some writing consultant. The vice chair of the board.
I'm with that, I'm the co-executive director of RMI. And I think
Mike Johnston, I'm president of Johnston Transportation, 35 years, our transportation company, in Columbia County. I've served, I'm recently new to the board. I've served on the Carver Town Board and Belmont Board for over 24 years. Very active in the community for 40 years, fifth generation.
What do the staff?
Oh. Welcome.
So we're going to do a quick kind of carryover from the last meeting that talked about some strategic planning stuff, status of the objectives. I think that was in August with Jessica. Then we'll take a look again at, just so that they're present in our mind, the 2019 strategic pillars. There are some board interviews that I did a year, 6 and 12 months ago. And I'm just going to do a really quick roundup on that. I think I spoke with many of you, and some of you I didn't get to connect with. For each pillar, we'll also talk about then what do we do well, what more do we need to do, and what are we doing that we don't need to do. And we're going to move very quickly. So if you have something to say, jump right in. And I'm going to do my best to capture as much as I can. In the meantime, Jessica's going to take us through the strategic plan refresh and just go over a few of the key data points from that. By show of hands, can I see how many people were not here for the August meeting? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Hopefully you read the materials at least in preparation for that meeting and or after, because I know that Jessica and or Mike and or whoever sent out the materials, maybe it was Lisa, included that in the materials for today's meeting. Just
Perfect. So this, I'll go pretty quickly since most of you had already heard this back in August, but I think it's a good refresh for the conversation today. So when we think about Columbia County data and specifically the population, you know, we have the 61,000 population. The median age for the county is 48.5, which this is the highest in the Hudson Valley and second highest in the state. The statewide median age is 39. So it's not just like a year or two, right? Like that's 10 years. It's a pretty drastic difference. You know, Columbia counties, it's 10 years higher than the state median average. We also thinking about the population, there has been a decline. We lost about 1,500 people in the last, you know, since 2010. However, this data that is from 2021 census update data. So there, you know, did we make up that 1,500 due to the people coming in through the pandemic? We'll get to that maybe next year. When we look at income, the median household income is 68,000. The largest portion of self-employment income is that's at 5%. And related to the median age, 9.4% of the county's residents' primary source of income is from Social Security. And that's compared to 6.1% for the state. So that does make sense. If we have an older population, a majority of their income comes from Social Security. And 44% of the population earns less than $60,000 a year. I want to kind of make a point of that, because when we talk about housing, how important you sort of think about these data points as they all are connected and how things relate. So again, 44% of the population earns less than 60% a year, or $60,000 a year. Let me know, I am going really fast. There's a lot on each slide, but let me know if you want me to call out anything additional. But so as I mentioned, when we think about housing, so some numbers, that top part, right? So fair market rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is considered $1,000, $1,012. In order to afford this level of rent and utilities, which means that they say your housing cost shouldn't be any more than 30% of your income, which is high. Some places will say between 20 and 30. I use 30 here. On housing. So a household must earn at least $40,000 a year. Really what we're saying there is 32% of the residents can afford fair market rent here in Columbia County. No, that's just fair market rent.
Taxes, insurance, internet, and hopefully refrigerator doesn't.
All
go.
of those other pieces make up that 30% though.
Oh.
So that's factored into the 30%. So
it is calculated into the 40,000.
yes, yeah.
But they're still reading little, spending, disposable income.
Right, if anything, because they can't afford their rent, so they're really in that.
And a third of the county is almost 20,000 people, or 25,000 people.
Thank
Yeah, thanks. One other point I wanted to make here is that, 30, like you had said, 30% of the county earns less than $40,000 a year, which is really what would be required to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. When we think about housing from an ownership perspective, 2019, these are all statistics you probably have all heard, right? In 2019, the median property value in Columbia County was $233,000. The home ownership rate was 73%. And when we get to 2022, the median property value increased by 58% to $379,000. Again, keeping in correct.
35% of the single family homes in 2020 and 2021 were sold to people who lived whose address was more than 50 miles away.
Just another question. Do we know what percentage of the 25-minute drives that are happening? How many of those are going out of the county versus staying within the county? Do we know that?
About
I know at
35%.
one point in time we did. Okay.
It's about 35%, but you also have to balance that with people who are coming into the county to work.
So, right, all of those points, so the lack of affordable and available housing options for renters and homeowners contributes to the population decline, labor shortages, and has significant impact on the economic growth.
More influential parts and Valley. I mean, I know property values across the country, but not specific.
From what I've seen, the prices have increased across the state, but not to this level. I can get you sort of comparison looking at different regions if that's helpful. I can send that.
That we can share from our housing study and from the information that Adam Bosch presented on Friday, because Patterns had done a report that came out just before COVID. So we participated in the roundtable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they called it Bridging the Gap, was their, and they went through 6 or 8 different, housing, education, workforce. So that, we'll get you the link for that.
Yeah, and you'll see it compared to different other counties in the state too. No, good questions. Now looking at employee data. So there are 22 non-government employers in the county that have more than 100 employees. That's that little gray piece on the top of the pyramid. And as you can see, the largest segment is employers with five or less employees, the bigger chunk on the bottom. So using this information under the new Columbia Forward program, eligible businesses who can that are eligible for Columbia Forward, that the program I talked about earlier, that would have 25 or fewer employees, you'd fit into those two brackets mostly. We're looking at more than 1,500 businesses in the county are eligible to be assisted through Columbia Forward. Anything else on this? Anyone questions?
The key there is if you take the 280 between 6 and 10 and the 1,400 under 5, you're looking at almost 1,700 out of 1,900 have 10 or less employees.
Funny, the largest company has 787 employees. The smallest has 3458, and something in between.
And regionally, we did a study that showed not-for-profits contribute 25 to 28% of the economic engine of the economy in the region.
I have for the data.
So this is not my slide, although I contributed to it in 2019. It's Jessica. She did a really great job with the material you all got for that refresh back in August. Just to hit on real quick, the current pillars include entrepreneurship and innovation, infrastructure, quality of life and sustainability, and workforce and education. Primarily entrepreneurship and innovations intended to connect businesses to information resources, connect businesses to funding, and advance county business and expansion projects. Infrastructure, increase shovel-ready development sites, increase investment in infrastructure, and monitor county-wide activities to expand broadband access. Quality of life and sustainability, strengthen Columbia County's economic health and competitive advantage. Enhance local government economic efforts and opportunities, integrate smart economic development into county and local activities for workforce and education, leverage Columbia County's education to workplace pipeline, and increase skilled workforce, increase funding for
Investment in skill training.
and invest. Okay, I was just getting hung up. Yeah, investment in skills training. Okay. I think the next slide, if I remember correctly. I'm actually going to have Jessica touch on this really quick. This was the challenges and considerations at the time. These are the kinds of things to keep in mind as we lead into the next portion of the conversation.
Right, so the continued impact on business operations due to COVID-19 pandemic, that's things we hear on a regular basis, dealing with the small businesses particularly. And that's where Columbia Forward program came in to help businesses sort of come back out of that, whether it's from funding or technical assistance. And limited infrastructure, including water, sewer, and broadband. These are across the board, whether it's housing that we talk about, or whether it's workforce development. These are all huge challenges for those topics. Limited development of new housing, specifically multi-housing and affordable, really impediments. And Mike mentioned the housing study that was done earlier in the year that called out the impediments, including the cost to development. We all know the cost of sheet of plywood, how much that's increased. What I heard, it was what, $9 still? In regulatory restrictions, community opposition, and then decreasing financial incentives when it comes to housing. What also isn't included here as of August, the increase in the interest rates. That is a huge impact. It was more than doubled.
And the restrictions from the fact we only have 6 sewer districts. So if you're going to build, you're not going to be able to build multifamily housing very easily.
They're very limited sites, if any, to do a large development.
Just, go back is making a question about the, what is it, 24 minutes, 25 minutes, yeah. If there, that's a big factor. Just 25 to 50 minutes away.
Why don't we pull that data and get it for you?
Yeah. If there's a goal to try to reach, that's also like, obviously the cost of fuel, the cost of, the environmental impact of travel commuting, and it's always, great issue start has at least 5 spectacular bike crashes.
And four of the 12 resumes for the housing coordinator were from the county. The rest were from outside.
Some stuff and send it to the board. And then the fourth one, gaps in workforce pipeline. Something to consider here, are there industries that should be targeted or prioritized when we think about our strategic plan and things going forward? What do we want to do related to workforce? What's our role in workforce? So I actually skipped over the considerations, or sort of the sub bullets here of things to think about. Again, going back to the strategic plan and doing sort of an update to where we're at. These are the things we want to think about.
Exactly, and does the plan address these challenges? And do we have appropriate metrics in place to measure our success? That's really where this should end up, that we can answer both of those questions. The next slide, I believe, is a roundup of the board interviews that I had done. Basically, that was approached from a 2-tier perspective, with questions, 3 key questions focused on CEDC, and then questions focused for reflection on individual contribution as a board member. We'll just talk a little bit about the questions that were geared towards the outcome of those questions that were geared specifically to CEDC. What does CEDC do well, and what can CEDC improve? Overwhelmingly, so by the way, I think there were 21 people that I could have interviewed with. I connected with 13. That included some staff and some board members. What does CEDC do well? Overwhelmingly, every single person in the loan program. Also partnerships, community relationships and partnerships, extremely strong. Adapting to the needs of the community, very good at convening and acting as a convener, not necessary to be an owner of the issues per se, but because CEDC has done such a good job of partnerships and is so well connected, being in a position to effectively convene a diverse group of businesses and individuals, that was something that was brought up multiple times. Additionally, the president is a true asset.
Only because I have a great staff that does all the work. So.
And of course, the board has spoken very well, and that Mike is a key driver of the relationships, which leads into some of the concerns on what CEDC can improve. If I jump to the bottom, the last item, succession plan, there is a recognition that most likely some of what Mike brings to the table right now is not going to be continued when and if he leaves. I'm assuming at some point in time that'll occur. The other piece of that was Martha, because the loan program is so strong. There are significant relationships and a knowledge set there as well. With that said, moving to the others, connecting the county very large geographically. So just being able to connect components and businesses within the community that are not based in Hudson, telling the story. PR needs work, outreach to the communities. And that, again, that went to the disconnected nature of the towns themselves and working within their own silos.
Climate-friendly policies incorporated. So there was some discussion, I'd say, with approximately 50% of the individuals I spoke to who voiced concerns about climate-friendly policies. And that led over into some of the things in particular with infrastructure and quality of life and sustainability. Looking quick at entrepreneurship and innovation, this was overwhelmingly the perception for everyone I spoke with as being the strongest pillar. The skills, it's efficient, it's well managed. The loan program, that should be an N, not a D, targets new and existing businesses. Infrastructure, crushing it. And that was specific to the broadband program and collecting the necessary information to close the gaps related to that. Brownfield sites need attention. And again, that was one of the places where climate-friendly policies being incorporated was viewed as an opportunity. Need to increase DEC cooperation, opportunities for shovel-ready, need to leverage this. That came up multiple times. Public transportation is weak, and what about the waterfront? So there was some discussion from a couple of individuals about opportunity for development there. Quality of life and sustainability was viewed as the weakest pillar. Housing is much too expensive, living wage harder and harder to attain. And what about
Retrofitting.
thank you, my eyesight there. Retrofitting old buildings was thrown out as an idea actually by two individuals. We don't need to cover that too much because Jessica pretty much gave us all the data as to why that is in fact something that at least right now for housing is a problem. Workforce and education, partnerships are very strong, need to support but not lead, fourth leg on a tripod. There was some discussion probably with approximately 60%, not quite 2/3 of the group, who there was a good round of consideration as to whether or not this pillar needs to remain. And if it does, what is the role of CEDC as it relates to workforce and education? And then even further, what then are the metrics for CEDC? As I'm sure you're aware, if you don't own a goal, having accountability for metrics related to goals and objectives is very difficult to do. So it was talked a little bit too about the nature of it being a fourth leg on a tripod. Essential because businesses must attract young people for employment. Workforce New York is good, needs work. I think that was older versus where things are now. Any questions based on that so far? Okay, no questions. Any concerns? No comments. Next slide. Let's.
I think one
Okay.
comment. It's interesting in my world, and I think Mike will concur with me, that workforce is kind of the weakest link in the chain here. But I tell you, it's like being in business, it's the hardest thing out there. I mean, it's the most important thing that I face is getting good people to work for you. So I'd hate to see us dump it when it's so important to business in a county.
And how to measure that role, yeah.
I think most of the discussion that led to the support not being in fourth leg and all that is just that should we as a group be in control of that? We have the college, we have BOCES, we have all these other entities that are much better at it. And so should we not give it to them? And we just, I don't know, monitor it or some lesser task.
No, and I agree with that. Yeah, and I don't know the answer. So I'm just kind of throwing it out.
I agree. Since we've started that conversation, Jess, can you take us to the slide that is pillar 4? There we go. So this slide was actually also one of Jessica's on the roundup. So let's talk about this a little bit and get some ideas flowing here on what can and cannot be done by CEDC. I think the biggest piece to come to some agreement on eventually by the end of a strategic planning process is commitment to whether or not CEDC is in fact an owner in this realm or a partner and supporter. And that then would drive all the supporting objectives, activities, and metrics associated with that. Right now, the wording is such: facilitate networking and collaboration among the county's educational, business, and government institutions to stimulate purposeful alignment of educational offerings and business needs. So some of the concern that does reflect a convening role, a partnership role. And when we had this conversation 3.5, 4 years ago, that was understood at that point in time that that was the right role for CEDC. There's significantly less, the issue related to workforce has increased. So at this point, I'm just going to hit on the considerations, and then I'd like some open discussion that we can capture on opinions as to what the role is for CEDC as it relates to workforce and education. Businesses across all industries struggle to attract and retain qualified employees, to Jim's point. How to increase workflow pipeline, how to link employers with the workforce. Are there industries that should be targeted and prioritized? So the first question is CEDC's role.
I'm very new.
Hi,
I'm
John.
June. So I feel like I have all the information or understand exactly what, or anything. I think those things that concern me. Certainly something Harley and I talked about in terms of our partnerships. But, so could it be said that CEDC is a representative of the county's business community? Therefore, could you say that it does need to take some sense of responsibility, creating, supporting them in some way? I mean, a little bit of money goes a long way. Programs and so I don't know. I don't have any real information or experience enough to say that this should be a pillar or anything. There's just
I tell you, I rely on Mike to send me information. For example, that $150 million grant program that was announced. Mike sent it to me right away. I didn't get it until like Friday. You know, for whatever reason, I'm not on that mailing list, and SUNY doesn't mail stuff out in a timely fashion. So I really do rely on Mike for hot tips, as it were.
Yeah.
That just strengthens the role of the college.
and very short emails that don't fit.
Exactly.
Distracting.
Yeah.
One topic per email.
I was one of the people that originally thought workforce should fade away or we should become involved. And I no longer feel that way. I really think we should put hands in it. What degree, I don't know. Again, I think the college and BOCES and everything they should be hands-on. They should be the ones doing it. Maybe we have some sort of support role. I don't have the answers. But
Yeah, it's sort of like a mailing list and the membership that an employer and exactly like Sean, most employees come from an hour. So I need I don't know.
People are living in
finding employees, you just said, is they don't live here. And they don't live here, there's a housing, so all these things are tied together.
Maybe some of the aspects, just going back to what you said, the CEDC may be able to partnership with BOCES, with colleges, and to monitor them so that they can maybe take the lead agency once the student leaves that facility. That's where the ball's dropped. I see it. I've seen it.
Say that
35
again, where
years.
is the ball drop?
The ball is dropped in my in transportation for 35 years. I've seen a student get on the bus in kindergarten and follow that student through high school, through possibly knowing them to continue going to college, come out, and they're lingering. They're lingering.
there's no avenue here to entice them to give them a little shove or come out, meet them at the door of the Columbia Green College and say, come on, we're going here. Let's go. We just came out of that door and here's where you're going next. Go next door to this door. We need something, an avenue to come to and say, where can I take what I learned forward? Because unfortunately, you can't count on the fall of the parents' skills. And I take that scenario, not to knock anyone. I saw that scenario taken back when they transported children to Head Start.
Is there a program within the county, or the region, Mike, that does outreach to, or business, to colleges for Columbia County? So taking the business, going to each of the colleges, and in those colleges doing education with some of the admin, but then also going to fairs and so on and handing out the information. And these are the jobs that we have here. Is there a program like that? Has there been, and it failed
I mean,
or did
the
well?
college outside the county?
Colleges outside to bring people in.
Very ambitious, but, new person who's working on volunteer recruitment. And she wanted to go to 2 college fairs far away. To a couple, but I was really like, that's questionable use of her time. But if you're always saying, why aren't you looking at all the colleges in the Albany area? Why did you, because we're such a small entity, we can't go to all those jobs.
Well, remember the 518 was, did advertising in Brooklyn to try to get younger people to move up here and,
So there are two things going on right now. One is that the value of higher education has eroded. And what I've been seeing just in the past year, and this is obviously very much pandemic related, is employers are so desperate for workers that they're going right into the high school classes. For example, they'll go into a junior in high school and say, I've got an internship program for you. At the end of the internship program, when the students become a senior, that individual is offered a job for $80,000 a year. You don't need to go to college. You come here and we'll train you. And that's great for putting money in your pocket immediately to buy your gas and buy your eggs. But it's very short-sighted because that person is not going to be able to advance without some kind of training, right?
So that adds, so if it's on campuses and should there be something on high schools? I guess what I'm wondering is, are there efforts to bring in, and I don't know the answer to this, broader than CEDC in the community, our county already, to bring in the young people for jobs, either from high schools or, because that's what some of what you're saying could very well be trade skill
Well,
related.
that's why we have career connections. I mean, that is for juniors in high school to expose them to the labor market. But here's the other issue.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling really old when I say this. The work ethic is totally eroded. Young people are completely adrift. I have a very, very dear friend whose daughter went through
As the sole lone young person in the room.
No, I can tell you. I have a very, very dear friend whose daughter went through a 6-year co-op program. Had co-op experiences at Coleman Farming, Wisconsin, at Pro, at Mattel. And the person is now working as a waitress in a restaurant. She could have gotten a job anywhere in this country. And she's a waitress. And I don't begin to understand it, but I'm seeing it more and more, with our students. They're just like, have a drive. Exactly, Michael. So what's happened to the drive?
What are the other thoughts on what CEDC can do to impact this? Jen Kelman.
I think there are ways that CEDC can impact the worker shortage without being involved in hands-on workforce development. Essentially, the college the other day focused a lot on affordability housing as a big barrier to having enough number of workers coming into the pipeline, and also the cost of childcare as a barrier to younger people working.
Transportation.
I'm sorry, Sean, are you saying that's something CEDC can have
I
an
don't, I
impact
don't,
on, or is it
I'm
problem?
just saying it's another factor like housing.
Okay.
These other issues is that, a lot of people who work for us who have children choose to not live in Columbia or Green counties. They live in
Business owners, what is the most effective way in reaching out to potential employees to get them? Advertising, is it word of mouth?
Word of mouth in our case.
Is there a centralized place anywhere that we can find? Jobs that are out. Is there a centralized place?
Instagram.
And I think that's part of the issue. Part of the issue is, so we have two factors here. Clearly, we know that there's generally a lack of workforce, or there's a lack of employees available out there, or there is a need for employees, let's say. However, at the same time, we have this problem of there's a lot of people out there looking for work. Clearly, there's work available. That's the missing link. The missing link is the information in between, and how can we connect the people who want to work to the employers who are looking for those employees.
Because I heard just a job.
There's still a fair amount of people out there who are looking. I mean, and the issue is not the jobs that are available are not exactly what they are looking for, because as we mentioned before, there's a change in the definition of what work should be at this point. And that's kind of where the employees have to be, the employers have to be a little bit more. Right.
That's all the time. So
Everyone wants to.
that is destroying the work.
Maybe could. About what these implications are and.
Right.
Environments, not being seen, to be promoted because you're sitting at home with the cat,
And you don't feel a part of the team.
Yeah.
I offer some
Yeah.
work, But it's hard to not have people in there every week.
I just want,
Sorry, I wasn't gonna, I think that's about this because I feel like I'm coming from a emotional mom situation, but this resonates heavily and when, we think about work ethic. People, one thing that seems abundantly clear is they're all incredibly anxious. And they have an anxiety that we can't relate to because we grew up with it for the kind of, we got the chance to be blissfully ignorant about all the terrible things that are about to happen. They are hyper aware about it. I don't know what I could do if I were that anxious. And the only thing I'm hearing that as a solution, that's why I didn't want to bring up is how do you, but they're not at the table. And where else are they not at the table? You know, if we, instead of slamming them for their work ethic, we invite them in and say, what's going on? You know, and I'm not saying necessarily here, but in the county, that pipeline we talk about, what, you know, in all of the, BOCES and everybody.
And just from a independent outsider listening to everybody, the other thing I'm hearing is us wanting to fix the younger generation, close their gap. And it's very much they are like this now. How do we get them to have better this or that? Versus, and the businesses getting some education and understanding on creative ways and what the young workforce does want today and what does motivate that young group. Because there is a group of people, they're not coming here and they're not coming here for a reason. And I brought that up very specifically because I am a mom as well. And my daughter's been saying the same thing. And she also will not come here because of no affordable housing.
Right.
So.
well, I
sorted out.
I was just gonna say, in talking about the pillar, right? If we think about the history of it, we've had it for a while. It started initially, I would say, as a traditional workforce. When you think workforce development, it's worker driven. And we focused on that, and I think rightfully so. But we have to recognize workforce development in Columbia County is a lot different than Schoharie County or Fulton County. When we look at our unemployment rate, we look at the challenges we have in housing. So I think the points brought up here, is it marketing the opportunities? And I think the idea of providing some sort of connection between, do we need to flip it and have it be business driven to develop the workforce, in the sense that providing some sort of database, some sort of connection, marketing it to people to come in here, and also trying to provide a resource to businesses.
And then that does look like something that CEDC can help with the effective partnerships and connections to the business community. That now becomes something. So if it's a partnership between BOCES, who's working with the students to close the skills, to the educational community who's doing some of the connections there, CEDC, now there is a tangible piece and work with the business community that CEDC can do to get several of these things that we've talked about. Is there anyone who's, because I'd like to move the conversation to another pillar. I believe.
I want to.
Yes.
One, how did we quantify the major accomplishments of the career jam and the virtual career job? Because I was an employer on those virtual things, and it was an extreme waste of my time and resources and energy. My daughter's 11. She's been looking for a job since she was 7. So if anybody wants to hire her, she, I'm going to jail. And also, I'd like to hear the anecdote, because CEDC just hired somebody. How did you find the job listing? Like, this is right in front of our face. Like, how did you find out about it? And how did you get here?
What we did was, we advertised in the Register Star and the Columbia paper, just for good political work. Rona at the Register Star had us do 2,000 electronic blasts on the site. We did post it, on LinkedIn and Facebook. And we went on Indeed. And Riley, I don't recall how did you find us? Yeah. So I think that, we need to do a better job. And I do think that, there's an element here of what I'm hearing is that would fit into the Columbia Forward model with the chamber, who has 500 members and we have 80 or 100. Because I do think that part of the Columbia Forward effort is to get out and work with most of the town. Well, half of the towns have business development organizations, Chatham, Ankrum. And I think I'm proud of the accomplishments we've had in partnering. But again, some of that was when Maureen retired, and it took a year for Chris to arrive. And I do think that right now, Danielle Palesci, who's the deputy at the Workforce New York office, came out of Friday's event saying she wants to talk with Chris about redoing our monthly, if not every other week, calls. And I think that then, I always try to look at things through, do we lead, do we partner, or do we support? I think we have to partner on this because there are so many, and I think that there are natural leaders in this process. And I do think that these are great ideas to flip it.
Is there anyone who doesn't believe CEDC should be a partner?
I just have one question about this. We have the committee, which hasn't been meeting at all. So if we keep this on, what would be the function of our committee, and do we need a committee for this?
And I would propose that we keep that question. There should be a secondary conversation on developing what then the actual tangible objectives would be, and that committee, what does that committee then do? How does that translate?
The partners, maybe they're not board members.
Great
idea.
That's a really good idea.
It's that community role. So maybe
In the beginning, we invited them. So Jim Church came and Maureen, I think her last name. So,
Let me broaden that partnership.
but why don't we turn this to the committee, and the mission to the committee will be how to help define the details of what should come back to the board for final discussion.
There's no central place that the businesses that belong to the chamber or post a job, like the CEDC benefits it. There's no.
See, I'm intrigued by Rick's question about,
At a certain point, Craigslist actually, like 10, 15 years ago, everyone went to Craigslist, like you would go to the corner in your town where people would post it, as ridiculous as it is. All day, job listing would be great.
I mean-
Indeed and LinkedIn are really, hard to find a job on there. I've been looking for jobs on it, you don't hear back from anyone, so. I think a lot of people get frustrated in the process. There's, it's very hard to kind of, you're sending an email. Don't know who to follow up with. So utilize that.
yeah, I would just say, I mean, because it seems like even at this discussion, it's an ad hoc way of it. When you ask how do you get an employee, it's like, well, you ask this guy, you post it. It's an ad. Is there any way CEDC can either facilitate or become or help make a clearinghouse that people know about?
Is there a BOCES person on this board?
No.
And one thing we could do
I like that idea.
is revamping our job postings to be less and to be therefore a little more open-ended, so people don't see themselves in it.
I would say half of the applications we got were people who were looking for the higher salary, but didn't have any experience related to the job description.
More money.
Now and to go online, you have to post the salary.
There was a website at one point, probably 10 or 15 years ago, that had jobs available. And I don't remember.
Well, why don't we bring this back to the partners and see,
Tries to.
we partner, when you go back to the.
But there's nobody uses it. Right, like that's, I mean, you can create it, but if businesses aren't gonna put it there.
Work with Kellyanne on our job central, which is the repository of all the jobs.
We posted there.
That's what I thought.
And for the housing job, we posted, with Albany Law School, the University of Albany's planning, department. We also, the associations, the Economic Development, the Housing, Rural Housing Coalition. And I think that, it was,
Years, it takes 4 or 5 years to get to know the geography of them, know where the colleges are, where they think, so one responsible. List, like file, list every college, every program.
I'm hearing enough to
That's like
put
a
together.
resource to businesses, though.
Yeah.
I think getting back to the original thing about what CEDC's role, maybe
Right.
it's providing, if you're posting a job, here are a list of all the places that
Yeah.
You can post or something.
You just go to all the MBA programs.
So my facilitator hat is back on. We're going to close this conversation. It's absolutely, and I gave the most time to this one, and we did it first because I knew that this was something we needed to drill on. The data sets we had to, and all of the stuff that we got back from all of you said we had to.
What I'm
Going to the
hearing,
Community, or to the.
but what I'm
committee.
hearing
Yep.
is come back to the board,
Yep.
either through the committee or directly, with some ideas on how we flip this to look at it from the business's perspective, not from the educator's perspective, although we will partner with educators in the process.
Partnership community.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. This
With
is
that,
good.
let's go to infrastructure. We have 28 minutes left in the 75 minutes. That was allotted to this. So it may be necessary to continue another 30-minute conversation at the next board meeting. I don't know. Let's just put that out there because this is an important one as well. I'd like to propose before we go into infrastructure, entrepreneurship and innovation. Is that what it is? It's so strong right now, and the goals on that are very specific. They're very measurable, very tangible. I'd like to propose that further conversation on that is not necessary at this time. Is there anyone who disagrees with my statement? Okay, so we're good with that one.
Well, I
That
would
moves us
say
to
I'm
two pillars.
Very interested in discussing the number 3 one.
Okay,
No.
let's do this, given how tight we are in time. Who wants to discuss infrastructure? Who wants to discuss quality of life and sustainability? Okay, let's switch it.
And just quickly on this, we have broadband under control, we're starting housing, we're working on the federal funding for water, sewer, gas, and electric. So, yeah, I think that, it's defined and we're working on it, you know.
Okay, so.
I mean, right away, I just feel like the objectives in it also,
And they are.
and they don't really get to the heart of the matter about what are the factors of quality of life. I mean, sustainability is an element of that, but, you know, I think what is the quality of education?
So let me
Quality and
just read
frequency of-
first, Sean, and
Yeah.
then I'm gonna hand back to you, but so that we're all in the same page on this. The description of quality of life and sustainability. Partner, so that's a key word right there. Partner with public and private organizations to identify and support improvement and expansion efforts designed to improve quality of life. Let's skip those objectives for right now because we're all pretty much nodding that this is an issue anyway. Considerations. I'm just going to toss these onto the table. Clean energy and climate change, county's competitive edge, ensure programming is inclusive of all people and all abilities. Although measuring quality of life can be subjective, there are basic indicators: employment, unemployment, education, housing, blah, 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 blah. Essential services such as fire and rescue, financial security of the organizations. With that, Sean.
Yeah, so, okay, thank you, because, yeah, you covered those there. I mean, I would say, arts and culture are quality of life and what attracts people to live. No mention of arts and culture. The Columbia County is known as rural beauty, agrarian, landscape. And that is a big driver to that investment that those people make in properties. And being up here, I know that very personally from those are the majority of my board members. Things like what we've seen is an explosion of solar industrial plants around the place. I don't call them farms. And there be a role in the business community in smart solar locations. That's an area being a partner in. It means, can we get sustainability is also the environment see every day and what happens to our feelings about it.
Anyone feel that that CEDC does quality of life and sustainability well? Generally. Okay.
Well, I look at it, I started out, quality of life was the bucolic hills of Columbia County and arts, culture, tourism, and the creative economy. And several years ago, we did have a creative economy forum. And I think that, when you look at it, we have worked closely with the town of Copake in the response to the Mammoth Hecate solar project. Projects we're working on for the county are all 5-acre, 5 megawatt projects. And the tension is, of course, that the state is pushing these onto home rule. And I do think that, it has been difficult because it's what is the quality of life and how can we impact it? So I really, if you can give us some.
I use it, it's a Congress agreement.
Content, but I also think, I think about a lot is, the families have been here for 5 generations, these kids perhaps can't now live in the county or the Franklin. That's too expensive. Volunteering at the fire and what happened to all those people
can't afford to live here anymore, and now we're paying for essential services that we're not yet. Now taxes go up, it's even harder to live here. So I just feel like what's happening, that we're not paying attention to at the county. And it's all, again, related, affordable housing, the disparity of wealth is an issue. And where do people, all my young employees drive an hour too. And, gas is so expensive. How do we solve that problem?
And I grew up in Flint. Or certainly not any jobs that would promise promotion and advancements, and it's like, about amazing. And you've got the ability and the connection to all these urban centers from Albany to Boston, Hartford, New York City. I mean, and yet, it could still maintain, how can we create a way that people who grew up here can say that some of the good jobs that we have.
I really think that every person who moves up to New York City should have to volunteer.
But seriously, you meet people on the other side of the fence. I actually.
Or be.
I'm voting like.
And then hit them with that tax.
Is it closed? Is there a way to open it?
The most criticism I got was when we had the forum for second homeowners, because someone said they are gonna wanna vote here.
Just to take off the way you should. About the solar farm. It's huge as far as the quality of life there. The way it's being done now, whether we deal with it, I don't know, but,
What if from the airport, I was wondering, oh, great, they're gonna build some houses up there. Shit.
Yeah, exactly. So what happens if this grows and grows and grows and then most people know.
Yeah, absolutely. And farmers probably have to compete now for the value of that land. Right? I mean, basically.
I think one of the things that comes up in Germantown a lot that I think about all the time is redefining what rural means. Because if you ask someone who moved here 4 years ago what's their country dream and what rural means to them, it's very different. Fourth generation farmer who's struggling to stay in business, and really second hand owners who want to buy up land and not develop it, which is amazing, but also then, where are the farmers and where is the history of what rural was here, and okay to redefine it. I would love, for people to be open about that, and because it really affects the comp plan. It really affects all these small towns, the county, there is such disparity because it's rural.
All farms.
Yeah, so I would love that rural is part of it and redefining it, because then it could also show us where the opportunities are or where the threats are. If farmland is becoming solar farm, that's an important, what's happening.
I mean,
Rural
having had to
research.
just spend 2 days on Long Island, that in my father's generation, where he grew up with rural state of farms. It is now just one big strip mall with gated communities off of it, where people live very nicely, but you still have to be out in the strip mall. And I mean, so I think what Columbia County could be, has potential to be, is reinforce village centers, reinforce the city of Hudson as the places where there's density, and keep the open land, and keep, and that is zoning, but, it has to.
I'm sorry, yeah, it's a conversation I've been having with a lot of people. Cultural community in this town. And it is quickly going away, whether it's a summer farm or a tourism project, there are various things that are happening. And we are known, for the agriculture. That's when I first started 30 years ago. To see that and be blessed by the apple farm and all that. And it's deteriorating. I'm a jaded person at this point about looking. But I don't think that we, as a county, I remember when we back to go to the farmers market in New York City, and I would go back and forth and see, heavily promoted from Columbia County, the farmers there. That I don't sense that. And I don't know if that's our job here with the CEDC, but it's certainly, business development is protecting our legacy, and that is that.
Speaking of agriculture, my main, when it comes to using waste as a resource,
all the food and stuff that we use, we just throw out, we mix whatever into the landfill. The Green Metropolis of San Francisco has everybody divide up their compostable stuff, recyclable stuff, and then their garbage. And the food waste goes off to the facility and gets turned into compost, black gold. That'll help the soils, it'll pull down carbon. We're an agricultural community. How come we're just throwing our resources away when we can just give it back to the farms or sell it back to the farms, you know, as a resource? So that way, yeah, sustainability, we're not filling up our landfills, we're making the soils richer, we're taking carbon out of the atmosphere. Because if it just goes into a landfill and it gets covered, I don't know if you guys know this, it instead of the releasing carbon, it releases methane. So it's like we could win, it'd be a lot of wins, but it's not our job to force these policies, but I think we could use our weight to influence, you know, the government to make these.
If I could touch on that for a second, because it's very interesting. Well, that's a great thing. But I have some experience with what you're saying. I owned for 17 years in solid waste. And not to throw a sword at anyone, but well, I'm counting this out for 25 plus years on a pilot line. They produced in my opinion, they produced the solid waste program, which has not brought the funds back to the probably just what you're saying. Because you go elsewhere, I'm off board. I go to watch the program that you're talking. They are very, nothing gets wasted. Everything is calculated and done properly, but what it does do, it brings in jobs. Because they do it so efficiently, they do it so well, it creates jobs and it creates an income back to the county or to the municipality that's running the program. And it's a lucrative business.
And I broke that down as a business opportunity.
Absolutely.
So maybe how to foster that or get the environment such that it's time for that. And whether it's bringing in an organization that's already doing it someplace else and they can use some of the space here to do that very thing, or a new business popping.
I'm trying to think of concrete things that measurable accomplishments that the CEDC could do. Have you, I'm sure there's been in the past, like quality of life surveys, rank, and, you know, is that something that's done?
There are, I was gonna ask Mike to talk about that specifically, because there are reports very specific to quality of life and what those, you know, 3 or 4 key metrics might be.
And then just, you know, agriculture seems to be somewhat passionate topic. It seems like that would be with governance to be done in trying to get some people who represent that sector.
And I think one of the
No, we
biggest
got
challenges.
Derek.
And we also have.
And yeah.
One of the biggest.
A lot of them are too big.
Yeah, it's value.
They're milking the cows right now.
You have to go to a value added product for like the liquor, the alcohol is huge.
And we are talking with the Williams Farm, their biodigester project is still.
Biggest weekend activity in Columbia County is street farmers markets.
One of the biggest concerns.
And breweries.
related to Quality of life metrics in general is that it is never one organization contributing to it. So when this conversation was had 3-4 years ago, thus the word partner, but it needs to evolve to a commitment by key leaders in the county who could contribute. So similar to workforce and education development, we've got several entities identified that can come together and identify their piece of the puzzle that will contribute to that moving forward in a meaningful way for the rest of the community, right? Quality of life is something very similar to that. So CEDC's participation in that will be a sliver of the pie or piece of the pie, but there's several other organizations who have to commit to it as well in order to see meaningful change.
No, finish your thought.
That, if I
No, because
Don't
I
they
just want to
want
bring
to
something up that I'd like to. A note made of.
Yep.
I mentioned this to Mike in the past, possible past, it would have to do with quality of life, accomplishment. Our war office, which is over in St. Lawrence. Place with him. And rumored that there's waste on there that's toxic and what else, they don't want to sell it, they're impossible, they don't own it. All the things are wrong, we're trying to do something, but I just think a note made that is on our thoughts. And, I really would.
It must be a liability for them.
Mike's worked on it and around so many barriers. And up on the sidelines.
They won't even rent garages, they won't even rent them out. They own also that old stone house and stuff.
The Toll House.
Is that a toll house?
So that this isn't identified as a single, I'm identifying this as a potential for a bucket of places to be. What are some areas or opportunities for improvement? And I've identified that one. Are there other ones that I can add to?
Right there, you next door to it, you have a thriving business with somebody who's interested in doing.
This is very helpful because I think that, we can't resolve this in one session, but I think, Jessica and Martha and I had opportunity to try to think about it. I've been looking for some time at a report that's done in Orange County about the quality of life report card from 2015. There are topics for education, healthcare, older adults, economy, environment, arts and culture, transportation, public safety, government, which includes waste. I think if we get a bigger picture of these things, you might help us pick four to focus on.
Section right up there, that's my quality of life.
It's gonna be
I think one of the things that we're kind of ignoring here is challenging one of the resources that this organization, I think government in general, funding benefits pay a little bit more attention to is fire rescue. I think everyone kind of has this idea that it's still a volunteer driven organization, and it's not. Fire still is Columbia County, but there are no at the moment truly there are no truly volunteer organizations for EMS and emergency medical services. Every single one in Columbia County, which is great, but they're struggling. In that every other business.
We-
Road, because you cannot get staffed in. Multiple factors. There's different requirements for education into the jobs. There are a lot more requirements for not just startups, but to remain in the job and when you have to get some education and everything like that. We as a county, we're going to start seeing real impacts to that. You're going to start seeing longer wait times for ambulances. Start seeing longer wait times. As it stands right now, I get information sent to me from dispatch every single day about the wait time of Columbia Memorial Hospital. Something that has not been addressed yet. I don't know what can be done about it from this organization's level. However, it will start impacting who the unfortunate event of the ambulance.
They mentioned that at the Skilling the Gap, it was a pretty hot topic in our table when we breakouts talked about it, about the desert, about how long it does take currently because there's just not enough services.
We have a very good system in place where even though there's our we're but that requires in the Columbia County has the water resource. That is tough right now for those.
Michael?
I have just a question. That's absolutely. I was heavily involved with the original 911 system, for 38 years in the fire system, and 25 plus rescue squad. So my question, alongside, could the seat, their capacity at some point in time, come up with a plan or give help to trying to come up, and I don't stand this, I'm asking them, could they come up with the ability to do a survey of how to put facts on the table, the new facts, the way Columbia County does, what it would cost. Columbia County Fire Service had to go fully paid, and Columbia County and all of the ambulance service. At the present time, we call for an ambulance, who have now, the ambulance service, correct me if I'm wrong, the ambulance service will get some from that, possibly. They, process is fine, we all know that. Depending on their services, depending on the issues that they have to go by helicopter. If a fire company is called, here it comes. We go out, volunteers, we can pay through our taxes, in the community, for fire trucks. Firehouse, keep the firehouse clean. It's all either what taxes are there, and people really just need to take a look at their tax bill, go right down to what that portion is. Absolute.
A time check right now, we have 3 minutes technically left
But
of the conversation.
I think between conversation with the chairman, and, some contact with patterns projects and also the county.
I'm just saying, if it could be just something that at some point in time was done and put out as an informational piece to the town.
But a lot of people are.
What would happen?
Absolutely.
Years ago. Which surprised me. And it may have already been done. It may. I was just saying, like that. But that was my 10 years.
I'm gonna rein this back in for just a moment. Is there, because we're essentially done with time, is there anything I need to write down now so that it can be carried over to the appropriate place? Anything burning, anything that didn't make it up for conversation? Yes.
So just the whole structure of our strategic plan, I feel like this columns, because they stand alone. What we've been talking about, there's a lot of overlap, so probably a Venn diagram would be something more appropriate for what we have. It's like, oh, the sustainability here, but then there's like the entrepreneurship over here, and there's our overlap. So if we just kind of revision it that way, yeah, some visual guys. So. Sorry, that was it.
So Riley, I've never done a Venn diagram.
You really couldn't answer.
Second. Proof will be in our response, not just by that.
Mike, anything? We need an iPad. I spoke to my kids, and it was perfect.
Sheriff Police Academy now. He got certified.
Yeah, I have a friend whose son is doing the same thing here. Mhm.
All he wanted to do was be a cop, so he's like, when we go to the beach, he volunteers.